The day I inherited 8,300 acres of land, I expected paperwork, taxes, and a lot of work. What I didn't expect was discovering that my property had become a tourist attraction. Hidden beneath the ranch was a private cave system stretching for miles underground. My grandfather had discovered some of the entrances decades earlier and had always kept them closed. No signs, no tourists, no public access, just untouched land. Then, 3 weeks after I inherited the property, I drove past one of the old access roads and noticed something strange. There were cars everywhere, dozens of them. People were getting out, taking pictures, and following a man wearing a bright red tour shirt toward the hillside. I stopped my truck. At first, I thought I was looking at some kind of private event. Then I saw the sign, Cave Adventure Tours, $75 per person. I couldn't believe it. I walked closer and found a second sign listing different tour packages. Basic Cave Tour, Private Expedition, Sunset Underground Experience. The most expensive package was nearly $300 per person, and every single tour started on my property. I walked over to the guide and asked who gave them permission. He looked at me like I was the problem. "Your HOA approved it," he said. My HOA, I had inherited thousands of acres of ranch land, but apparently someone inside a nearby homeowners association had decided they could turn my private cave system into a business. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I asked him who owned the cave. He pointed toward the HOA office. "They handle all of that." That answer told me everything. I drove directly to the HOA clubhouse. Inside, the HOA president was sitting behind a desk surrounded by brochures featuring photographs of my caves. She smiled when she saw me. Then she said something I will never forget. "You're new here. You need to understand that the community has been managing that land for years." I placed my inheritance documents on her desk. "I own the land." She barely looked at them. Then she pushed them back. "The HOA has established usage rights." I asked to see the document granting them permission to operate paid tours. She couldn't produce one. Instead, she told me the tours were for community benefit. I asked how much money they had made. She suddenly stopped smiling. That evening, I started digging through the property records. What I found was much worse than I expected. The cave system wasn't simply being used without permission. The HOA had created an entire business around it. They had hired guides, printed advertising, collected admission fees, sold merchandise, and even created online booking schedules, all without my authorization. Then I discovered something else. They had installed lighting and electrical equipment inside one of the caves. They had drilled anchors into the rock. They had created walking paths. And they had permanently altered sections of the cave system. That was the moment I stopped thinking about money. This wasn't about $75 tickets. It was about protecting something my family had preserved for generations. The next morning, I hired a surveyor and a property attorney. We mapped every entrance, every access road, and every boundary. Then we installed private property signs at every legitimate access point. I also sent the HOA a formal notice demanding that all tours stop immediately. Their response arrived 2 days later. They claimed they had historical access rights. So I asked them to prove it. They couldn't. Their attorney sent pages of arguments, but still couldn't produce a deed granting ownership of the caves. Then came the meeting. The HOA president arrived with 3 attorneys. I walked in with my attorney and a stack of property records. One of their lawyers said the community had invested significant money into developing the cave tours. My attorney calmly replied, "You don't invest in someone else's property and then become the owner." The room went silent. Then the HOA president made one final mistake. She said the caves had been abandoned by my family. My attorney opened an old county record. It showed my grandfather had paid taxes on the entire property for decades. Then he produced photographs showing the cave entrances had been intentionally sealed and marked as private. The HOA's entire argument collapsed. But I wasn't finished. I asked for a complete accounting of every dollar collected from the cave tours. They resisted, so we subpoenaed the records. When the numbers came back, the total shocked everyone. The HOA had collected hundreds of thousands of dollars from tourists, money generated from land they didn't own. money they had never been authorized to collect. The tours were immediately shut down. The signs came down. The guides disappeared. And for the first time in years, the cave system became quiet again. I spent months restoring the damaged areas. Some of the lighting had to be removed. Several anchors had to be professionally extracted, and certain paths had to be closed completely. Eventually, I stood at the main cave entrance with my grandfather's old photograph in my hand. The same hillside, the same entrance, but now there were no crowds, no tour buses, no ticket booths, just silence. My grandfather had protected that cave because he believed some places were more valuable left untouched, and I finally understood why. The HOA thought they had discovered a business opportunity. They didn't realize they had walked onto 8,300 acres belonging to someone who was willing to defend every inch of it. And the craziest part? The HOA later sent me an invoice for community security and access management. I sent it back with one sentence. Thank you for reminding me why the gates are staying locked. If you enjoyed this HOA story, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?